Sunday Assembly, if you haven't been here before, we're a humanist congregation that celebrates life. It's a very important thing to us. You can come from any background, you can be on any walk in your journey or in your faith, and we're here for you. This is our motto. We have live better, help often, and wonder more. So live better. Try and take some time for yourself if you can, to have a mental health break if you need it. Talk to other people. Help often. You can be part of someone else's healing journey. Talk to them if they need some help or if they need somewhere to go. And wonder more. Think of all the things you can do. You may be helpless in one aspect, but maybe there's something else you can do to help others or to help yourself in the current situation that we're facing today. So today we're just going to have a gathering statement. We're going to go through a meditation. We're going to do a really fun, interactive moment of wonder. And then we're going to have the address by our president, Joe Kaczynski. And then Justine is going to do a reading. We're going to have Austin, an awesome speaker, up today to talk about anarchy and humanism. We're going to have a question and answer period for Austin. We're going to make some announcements, and then we're going to have some lunch, which is subs, and we can talk about some grievances people have as well. All right, gathering statement. So we gathered this morning to connect with each other, with nature, and with our humanist values. Being here together builds in us our sense of community and friendship with each other. So let us listen to each other's stories with open hearts and open minds over delicious food, as our ancestors have done for millennia. Let us remember that we have this one beautiful life, and today we're here to celebrate it. We're just going to start with a meditation, because I know everyone's feelings are very high right now, so we're going to try and bring everyone down. So take a moment to settle into stillness and find a comfortable position. Close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. Gently bring your attention inward. Feel the breath, its rise and fall. Steady and constant, with the rhythm of the world itself. In this moment, remember that you are part of something much larger than yourself. You are a single thread in the intricate fabric of humanity, woven through time and space. The events that surround you, while they may seem overwhelming, are but a chapter in the ongoing story of your life. A story that continues, regardless of any single moment or circumstance. Let go of the rush to change things, to fix everything. You don't have to have all the answers right now or ever. Just as a tree does not force its branches to grow faster, you do not need to force solutions into being. Trust that time will unfold as it should, and that you, too, are part of that unfolding. Breathe in deeply, and with each inhale, remind yourself that calm is always available, always within reach. Breathe out slowly, releasing tension and impatience, letting go of the need to control everything. You are not alone in feeling uncertain and wanting things to be different. But just as the seasons change with patience, so too will your circumstances evolve. Think of the things in your life that have taken time to become what they are. A relationship, a skill, a habit. They all require patience, both from yourself and from others. What was once unfamiliar is now comfortable. What once was difficult is now easier. Trust that in this moment too, things will pass, and as it passes, you will grow. In the quiet, ask yourself, how can I meet this moment with patience? How can I embrace uncertainty, not as a burden, but as an opportunity to practice resilience and trust? There is no need to rush, no need to push against the current. Allow yourself to just be, just as you are, here and now. And as you breathe in again, remember that all things change. Patience is not passive. It is an active choice to remain steady, to trust the process of life, even when the path is not clear. Feel the power in that choice, the quiet strength that comes from trusting that. Though you may not see the full picture, you are exactly where you need to be. Now slowly bring your awareness back to the world around you. When you're ready, open your eyes, carrying this sense of calm and patience with you into your day. Trust that whatever is unfolding, you are capable of meeting it all with grace. You are enough, just as you are, and in time, this too shall pass. Is everyone feeling calm? That's good, because we're going to do a really fun activity, so I need 6 volunteers. Okay, so today, as a practice of letting things go, we're going to be painting. So we're going to be painting using some colors that represent the feelings that you might be feeling right now. So I'm going to be the first one. I'm going to choose a color and I'm going to paint something on this easel, and then the rest of you are going to go back, grab a color that you're feeling based on this, and you're going to just paint whatever it is you want based on that feeling. Make it as big or as small as you want, and we'll go with that. So I chose to paint yellow for peace, because I feel after we've just had that meditation, I'm at peace, and I'm ready for the next stage to come.
I know this is an apolitical road, and I am from Canada, and I kind of look across the border, and I know that there's a lot of people who are upset. The party that is most upset is also anarchistic sadness, and so I kind of feel that as well in everything.
I chose blue and purple. I am experiencing, a great deal of sadness and disappointment, but in the middle of that and coming through it, I hope, is a feeling of hope. And, that our communities can, become stronger through, mutual work and aid. And that things will ultimately turn out like that.
I chose green because I've had a lot of health drama in the last couple of weeks, and so all that's taken care of.
I chose orange for happiness because I'm feeling happy right now in this moment to be here and be with all of you. And like a lot of people, it's often not easy for me to feel happy or hold on to happiness in my life. It's easy to feel like you have this idea of what you would need to be happy or what you would need not to be happening for you to be happy, and to wait and wait for things to be perfect so then you can be happy. But there are moments, sometimes they're just small, but small moments of happiness in your life all the time. And a lot of that is what makes life worth living. And if you just wait and wait for things to be perfect so then you can be happy, you might reach the end of your life and it'll never happen. But there are reasons to be happy everywhere, I think. And I'm feeling happy right now in this moment.
I made a volcano because volcanoes are kind of cool.
He's a regular Bob Ross.
So I chose red because I'm angry about what happened, and I'm looking for ways to channel this anger into more productive ways of going about it and to be there for this community that is here.
I also chose red as anger, but in the symbol Lilith, which represents to me the feminine revenge and anger, and then outside of that is purple for hope, because that feminine rage and anger is what's going to help us move forward.
Thank you so much for everyone who came up and was part of that. I think it was a very cathartic experience. I'm over here just appreciating everybody that came up and shared their feelings and thoughts right now. Some of hope, some of anger, some of sadness, and we're all feeling all of those things. So it's a really good experience for all of us to have. I'd like to bring Marty up here for a second.
Me, Marty?
You, Marty, yep.
I don't have to paint anything.
For anyone who doesn't know Marty is usually our greeter. He does such a good job at that, but he's so much more than our greeter. Marty is one of those people who you can rely on for anything. He will give you the shirt off his back. He's always there for me. He's always there for everybody. He sends messages, he checks in on everybody. He's just an amazing person, amazing part of our community. And Marty, we'd like to present this to you from us at
That's very cool.
Yeah,
group home and have it on my wall. Really cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for gathering with us today, despite recent events. I know it's been a rough week, full of strong emotions, uncertainty, and tears probably. I'd be full of crap if I came up here today and told you everything was going to be fine. I'm not optimistic right now. I'm sure many of you are out there feeling the same. I want to urge you to think like a Sith Lord. These emotions, the power to initiate change. Give into your anger. Use it to marshal resources, to strive forward. Bring those around you with you. You might call it anger, but I think of it almost as righteousness. That being said, it's important to temper the feelings of anger and sadness, because they can lead us into despair, as Master Yoda has told us. The path of anger is easy. It is quick. But if we're going to come through this, we're going to need to rely on each other. Come together as a community, perhaps even raise a little bit of hell with our friends. So I want you all to try and channel that anger, sadness, negative emotions into productivity. Anger is your thing. I find myself finding that toil can be equally as important. That being said, we have a lot coming up for Sunday Assembly. We have elections coming up soon. We're kind of doing almost like a little shuffle. I think most of our board will be shuffling into new positions and go through each and every one if you would like. But I would like to take this moment to recognize all of the hard work of our volunteers this year. Laura, I think she's out with the kids right now. Laura Victoria. Oh, there you are. Okay, I saw you out there. Steve and John. Justine, Austin. Couldn't have done this year without you guys. Love is also positive, strong emotion. The Jedi were frowned upon. Lean into that. Use it. Yeah, if you're interested, I can talk to you all about who's running for what. If you're interested in stepping up, feel free to come contact me or Austin or Steve. We can get you up on the election. We'll start online voting tomorrow. We'll go for a month. But yeah, we have other needs too. Sometimes we need things to take our minds off of what's going on outside of our control. We're looking for hosts for our cuisine conversations, if anybody's interested in stepping up for that. Also, have some exciting news about board game nights that we're going to try and do regularly. So if you're interested in being a host for that, we need help with that as well. We've secured a venue. We're also looking for some music coordinator position. We listened to some of the music on the way in, but I feel like it was perfectly topical. Some anarchy in the USA, perhaps. And then, last thing I address, if you know anybody who would like to be a speaker next year, we're also looking for speakers. So if you want to nominate yourself or somebody else, please let us know.
Hello everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Justine Turner, and today's reading is an excerpt from Emma Goldman's 1931 autobiography. Now, Emma Goldman was a born propagandist and organizer. She championed women's equality, free love, workers' rights, free universal education regardless of race or gender, and our topic of the day, anarchism. For more than 30 years, she defined the limits of dissent and free speech in the progressive era of America. And one of the more well-known quotes associated with her is, "It's not my revolution if I can't dance to it." For me, I like this quote as it alludes to the fact that activism requires sacrifice, whether it's our time, our resources, or more. And it's a serious business, but that doesn't mean we have to sacrifice the small joys or that it has to be the only part of our lives. It's not my revolution, I can't dance to it. It's actually a paraphrasing of the full passage that I believe really hammers home this sentiment. So, an excerpt from Living My Life by Emma Goldman. At the dances, I was one of the most untiring deists. One evening, a cousin of Sasha, a young boy, took me aside with a grave face as if he were about to announce the death of a dear comrade. He whispered to me that it did not behoove an agitator to dance, certainly not with such reckless abandon anyway. It was undignified for one who was on the way to become a force in anarchism movement. My frivolity would only hurt the cause. I grew furious at the impudent inference of the lawyer. I told him to mind his own business. I was tired of having the cause constantly thrown into my face. I did not believe that a cause which stood for the beautiful ideal of anarchism, for release and freedom from convention and prejudice, should demand the denial of life and joy. I insisted that our cause could not expect me to become a nun, and that the movement should not be turned into a cloister, if it meant that I did not want it. I want freedom, the right to self-expression, everybody's right to beautiful, radiant things. Anarchism meant that to me, and I would live it, in spite of the whole world, prisons, persecution, everything. Yes, even in spite of the condemnation of my own conscience, I would live my beautiful ideal.
Okay, without further ado, I'm going to announce our speaker for the day, and it's our Vice President, Austin Edwards.
Yeah, you get to hear me talk once more. So, first before I get into this, I just want to say thank you everyone who came up. That was really moving. I was like crying in the back. Seriously, that was really moving. And I think it really leads into the talk. But first, let me get you all riled up. If you reach under your seats right now, you will find a Molotov cocktail. We'll be burning down the police precinct after this. We'll hand out the black ski mask at the door. No, all jokes aside, I'm definitely playing into your view of anarchists as bomb throwers, as chaos makers, people who burn police stations, cause riots, and just frankly want to see the world burn. But, you know, maybe you haven't given it much thought. Maybe you're like, I don't know if you guys ever watched Talladega Nights. They do a play, let's see the word. It doesn't work. Anyways, the kids run through and they go, anarchy, anarchy! And then they spray some old man in the face with water. He goes, I don't know what that means, but I love it.
Gate first or last?
Yeah, gate first or last. So, this is a pretty interesting narrative. It's a very powerful narrative, and I think it's something that it makes it a very unthinkable idea for people to have, right? To even call themselves anarchists is at best idealistic, at worst it's something that's very harmful or violent or negative. So the first thing I want to do before we get into how this connects to anarchism is just to right some wrongs in this narrative of what it is. And I wouldn't have time to go into all the things that I want to. If you gave me 4 hours, you probably still wouldn't hear me stop talking, but you know who I am. Well, let's go through three. I think there's three that we can get to. First one is that anarchy is disorder. A lot of people associate anarchy with chaos. In fact, if you look up the definition of anarchy or synonyms of anarchy, the first one on some top sites is chaos. So let's kind of piece that apart and try to figure out why is it that it's so closely associated with chaos itself. Anarchy just means no ruler, just like atheism means no God, right? Let me double check. Sorry, I have a little more reading in my notes this time. Note that anarchy means no ruler. It does not mean no rules or no structure. This is a very important distinction. So when you're looking at why is this so villainized, why is this seen as something that's chaotic? Well, who sees chaos in the absence of a ruler? It's people who are already in positions of power, people who want to have control over other people. And when they see that there are no rulers controlling people, when there's a democracy, for example, versus a monarchy, that seems like chaos. like if you look at atheism, right? We say, oh, well, there's no gods. How do you know, have any kind of morals? How do you know how to navigate this world without some divine authority telling you how things are? It's going to be chaos, right? Well, we all know that's not true. We're all here. We're reading. We're very horizontal here. And we can live that full life. It's the same thing with anarchy. There's a couple other things here, too. So the flip side of anarchy, if you look at the word hierarchy, higher comes from the subroot of sacred. So it's actually a divine, sacred ruler is what hierarchy has its roots in. So it's kind of interesting. You know, I'm always a little bit confused by how many atheists say, you know, gods, and they don't go further and say, no masters, which is the kind of famous slogan of anarchism, no gods, no masters. I don't know if has anyone here watched V for Vendetta? So the movie, very good movie. I just rewatched it even after I read the comics. I have to say, the comics are even better. They're a little bit shorter than the movie in some ways, depends on how fast you read. But I really love this exchange here. There's a moment at the apex of the book, depending on where you call it climax there, but there's a spot where he's really started to implement all of his plans and cause society to go into disarray. And he, you know, there's looting, there's all this stuff. And this gal, Eve, I think maybe Eve, I don't remember how they pronounce it in the movie. But she's asking, you know, is this what anarchy is? Is this chaos? What is anarchy? And he comes back with this, he says, no, this is only the land of take what you want. Anarchy means without leaders, not without order, right? So this is what we're talking. So he's going on to say that true order is voluntary order, not coerced order. And only once the cycle of coerced order has run its course in this, you know, particular thing, then you'll have true order, or what he calls Ordnung. I don't speak German. So this is not anarchy, this is chaos. What's that?
Disorientation.
Disorientation, yeah. The verwering is confusion. I heard like bafflement or something. I was looking up some definition. But that voluntary order is the really important part. That you're not being coerced to do the things that you want to do. And that's really what anarchy stands for. So we can take a look at some systems and their accompanying anarchistic movements. Now I'll say that not all of these movements are self-identified as anarchist, but they are against a particular hierarchy, right? So if you look at patriarchy, for example, so the things below are the systems that are being fought, those are the hierarchical structures. The things above are the movements that were anarchic in their movements. So patriarchy, right? You're trying to take down the hierarchy of men over women. You've got cis heteronormativity. That's the LGBT movement pushing against these things that you have to be cis, you have to be hetero, and normalizing that. This LGBT opens it up a little bit. Like we talked, democracy, autocracy, ageism is another one that usually youth and older people are kind of pushed aside. So there's a lot of different movements that aren't necessarily, calling themselves anarchist movements, but the thrust is in an anarchist kind of movement. It's pushing towards a direction that has no hierarchy. And I think you'll see a lot of these are very deeply social justice oriented, right? So it's kind of an interesting thing. So when you come back to this very famous circle, I'm sure all of you have seen this, if not jokingly, seriously written on a lot of surfaces. This symbol means anarchy is order. That's what the O, and certainly the A is for anarchy, the O is for order. And so this is where they insist that true order is the egalitarian position, whereas disorder is the hierarchical positions of someone ruling over someone unjustly, right? So this is a pretty strong association that I'm hoping that I'm kind of dispelling a little bit here. I often juxtapose atheism and humanism with this idea of anarchism. So another word for anarchism is libertarian socialism, and that comes from, at the time, a kind of classical liberalism that was coming from the Enlightenment movement, and then you've got a democratic socialism. In fact, at the very first International, I don't want to go too deep into all the history and stuff, because I don't know very well myself, but I know enough to know to bore you, whatever I say. But basically, when everyone was getting around and saying, hey, we hate capitalism, whatever, we should do socialism, communism, whatever, anarchism was right there in the beginning. And as the socialist and communist movements took a more kind of authoritarian bent, you get things like Russia and things like that, the libertarian socialists were kind of kicked out of a lot of those committees and things like that, which was unfortunate. But just to say that this is where it kind of started. So anarchism ended up being kind of a pejorative. It was kind of like, I don't know if you guys know the history of the Big Bang. When people say, oh, the Big Bang, that was actually a pejorative of cosmic inflationary theory. Someone was saying it was like, oh yeah, there's a Big Bang, or whatever they want to say it. And we just kind of took it and ran with it, right? We were like, yeah, well, fine, that's a Big Bang, you know, it's the same thing. Yeah, we're libertarian socialists, but you want to call us anarchists? You want to try to give us this bad label? Fine, we'll take it, and we'll run with it. So I think a lot of times you'll see that atheists, even though they are humanists or humanistic in practice, they'll take on that atheist label, even if it's not necessarily fully representative of their identity. Same thing with libertarian socialists, they'll take on that anarchist label, even if, you know, in the nitty-gritty, this actually better describes, and it's, you know, it's more positively defined thing, just like humanism is. The last thing you might be confused about is the word libertarian. I know in the US in particular, the libertarian means someone who is often pro-capitalist but anti-state, kind of the worst of both worlds in my opinion. But libertarian was actually bastardized by people specifically in the US around the 1950s to 70s era. Before the 1950s and even today outside of the US, if you talk about libertarianism, most people thought anarchism. They thought this idea of this kind of anarchist, this egalitarian idea, and of course they were anti-state, but they were definitely not pro-capitalist. Capitalism is itself a hierarchy, so they wouldn't have been for it. So unfortunately nowadays, they've stolen the term. We have to either say left libertarian or right libertarian being the pro-capitalist people that are here in the US in particular. Went through most of that. The one distinction I want to make here is that you might think, okay, no rulers, no people in authority. So how do we trust, especially I think for people here in Sunday Assembly, where we're all very science focused, very expert driven. There's kind of this fear maybe that, well, with anarchy, you're just gonna throw everyone to the side. That people who are experts, we're just not gonna necessarily listen to them. But anarchists make a very maybe subtle distinction between someone who has authority and versus someone who is an authority. So someone who is an authority is someone who is an expert in a particular scientific field, or they might know a particular thing that would help. I mean, even gardeners or something. There's something that someone knows that they're an expert in that field. Having authority is a particular social relation between two people or two or more people, and having authority is something that is coercion at its kind of base. So someone who is an authority can be listened to, but it is not something that is coerced into that, into people around them. So, for example, I will trust experts on climate change. I will trust experts on evolution. I will trust experts on a lot of different things that I know they've done a lot of work on. And if I want to, I can try to check it myself. I don't necessarily have all the equipment and software that they do, but for the most part, you can check a lot of that stuff. That's very different than them saying you have to believe in climate change and then forcing you to do that even if you don't believe it, right? So there's kind of this thing there. The next one. There's, as we talked about in the beginning, there's this idea that anarchists are very violent people. And now I will say that, especially when it started, I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier today, but when it started, there was a lot of bomb throwing, assassinating anarchists at the time, and I'll get into that in just a second as to why that kind of became the case, and maybe why they mellowed out a little bit. But so for example, there was an anarchist who shot President McKinley. Maybe you guys learned about this one in school, yeah. He didn't die on the spot, he died later, I think it was like a day maybe or so later from the wounds themselves. There was the Haymarket bombing, a lot of people have heard of that one before too. They didn't actually ever catch the culprit, but they did try about 8 anarchists who they said did it. It was, if you read the information about what actually happened, it was absolutely chaotic, but it's not clear that an anarchist did. Maybe it was the case. But the biggest thing I want to point out here is that there are fringes in every group of people, and we try not to label an entire set of people based on the fringe group of that thing. So, for example, Islamophobia is a big one, right? So, for example, there are fringe people within Islam who will go and commit particular acts of terror. That does not mean that people who are Muslim, on a whole, are violent people, right? Same right, just people who are right-wing and Christian. And then there's this fringe group of people, right? You've got the Proud Boys, you've got KKK, you've got some of the Trump supporters, some of the people who did abortion clinic bombings. Now, maybe us here in this room would call the whole right-wing Christian group of people violent, but this is not how society understands the Christian right. More or less, they're seen as very reasonable people with a few people who are radicals within the group. Same thing could be said for the state. Actually, the state commits a lot of violence every day. For example, 700 people a year, on average, die while trying to cross the U.S. border between Mexico and the U.S. The U.S. police kill about 600 people every year. That's a 9/11, pretty much every 2 years. U.S. poverty alone kills about 300,000 people. This is a structural thing. And of course, we all know the U.S. military has killed many, 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 many people, either directly or indirectly, throughout history. But overall, we don't say, depending on, well, maybe we've got a different mix here, but overall, people don't see the state itself as a violent entity, depending on how deep you get into politics. But basically, people see it as a force for good and not there. So, just the idea that, there are fringe and then there are big things. So anarchism does have some people who do commit some violent things, but as a whole, and we'll get into it towards the end, as a whole, anarchists are fairly non-violent. We'll show you some of the examples of things that anarchists have done throughout history. So when you look at the state, as I was saying earlier, and this is maybe just a bit of a side thing, but a lot of anarchists are against the state. A lot of anarchists will say that they don't want the state. That is a much deeper conversation that is just not relevant to here, but there was a pretty good passage I wanted to read you guys from tvtropes.com, of all places. This was like really weirdly on top of the wall there, around the wall with it. So what characterizes anarchism is anti-authoritarianism more than anti-statism. Thus, most anarchists would not welcome a reduction in state power if it meant the increase of other kinds of authoritarianism. So, for example, imagine we had a public health service. Anyways, so imagine we had that. Privatizing it may formally weaken the state, but it would also give more power to private corporations and lead the rich to having more advantages over everyone else. Anarchists would probably oppose doing this, as the consequence would be a net increase in numerical authority ruled over the population. So just as a note, it's maybe in the weeds a little bit. There's the shorts, and then there's my quote about. It's more about anti-authoritarianism. It's important to realize that every political thought legitimizes violence against someone. What's important is who, why, and how much. And anarchists recognize that violence is occurring everywhere all the time, and often for structural reasons, like we were looking at there. The border is not necessarily your or mine decision to put that people are dying across. This is a structural thing that the state has caused. So anarchists often make a very key distinction about violence, and that is that property destruction is not violence, but destruction of people or harming of people is violence. So you'll see a lot of anarchists are doing actions against things. So, for example, blowing up pipelines or other kinds of stuff. Maybe they're attacking the border wall. They're doing things that are against property itself, and specifically structures of property that are harming people. So there's a article I read once that I thought was really good called "In Defense of Destruction of Property," and in it had this really good quote. I think that summarizes kind of the ethic of this anarchist kind of distinction of violence. Plain glass windows don't bleed. They don't die. They don't leave loved ones grieving. They just break, and then at some point they're replaced by an identical sheet of glass. So this is kind of this distinction that like hurting things doesn't hurt people. Hurting people hurts people. And kind of tautological thing there, but that's kind of the distinction there. So some of the violence depends on how you call it, but the last one is that we are disorganized as anarchists. This couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, that couldn't be further from the truth. There's actually been a lot of lessons learned over the years from anarchists about how to structure things. One of my favorite articles, and this was something I learned from some folks in IWW, which I'll get into, but it's called The structuralists. So there's this idea that, we discussed earlier that there are no rulers. That means there's no rules. That's not the case. In the theory of structuralists, she was, I think, second wave feminist in the mid-1900s or something like this. I think, or maybe 70s, 1970s, something like this. And she realized that when you don't have a formal structure to, for example, like positions or just your organization as a whole, you end up having an informal structure. And those informal structures are basically difficult to change. They're going to be based on popularity, on charisma. They're going to be basically impossible to bump someone out. There's going to be a lot of infighting, things like that. So what Joe Freeman here is arguing for is a structured group, and that way there are elections or things that you can do to unseat someone who's unjustly in power, right? So this is one of those things where there's no ruler, but there are people. There is structure to the group. The other one is Eleanor Ostrom. She's got a very fantastic book here. We've all grown up learning about the tragedy of the commons. And Eleanor Ostrom said, that's BS. There's actually all sorts of societies in the past who have governed the commons successfully. And they've done so without having to privatize something, and they've done so without having to leave it up to the state. And so she goes through, it's not a very thick book, but it's maybe a little heavy on reading, as far as the terminology goes. She explains how certain places in Italy, in Spain, and even she set up one in California for the California water basins. Everyone was using too much water and stuff, so it was kind of this, it was heading towards the tragedy of commons. I think it was like her college thesis. She just set up a whole new way of managing the water, and it's been working for decades. So it's really interesting. So she talks about ways that people can kind of self-govern themselves without having to look for a higher authority or making everything privatized. It's, like if you had a lake where everyone was fishing and then cutting up the lake and be like, okay, Bob's fishing is this little section of the lake, and Joe's fishing is this little section. There's a way to manage these things without having to create ownership within things and keep it as a commons. This is just scratching the surface of anarchist thought on organizing and things like that. There's also just tons and tons of examples of anarchist groups who have done things in the past. So I don't know, for the nerds, Summer Hill School, this was a democratically run school by the students themselves. Teachers were there to help, guide some of the learning, but most of the decision making about bedtime, I think it was something where they had to stay there on the place, but it was bedtimes, meal times, what's taught, how it's taught, why it's taught, when it's taught. All of that was democratically decided by the students themselves. Mondragon is a workers' co-op. This is an example of a more anarchist style of workplace. A lot of people haven't even heard of workers' co-ops. Most people think that it has to be a business owner or a board, and then everything goes down hierarchically. Workers' co-ops are from the bottom up. Actually, it's more like a union, so everyone gets together, forms a company, and then they elect people into the higher positions. And those people don't always stay there for very long. Often workers' co-ops have very low differences in pay from the lowest to the highest. I think Mondragon is up to maybe 10 times from the CEO down to the lowest paid person in the company. It can be even lower than that. That's definitely different from today's capitalist society where you have 1,000 times the janitor or whoever is the lowest paid person in the group. Fourth Thieves Vinegar Collective started making instructions on how to make the HIV medicine for people and just publishing that. So they can't sell the HIV medicine that's regulated, but they can just synthesize it themselves and give it away. And they can also just put the instructions out there for how to do that. That's not illegal. So there's lots of things that anarchists are doing all the time, which are organizing and creating kind of this alternative reality that we could be living in. It's called a dual power strategy. I won't get too much into that. There are also local orgs. Punks of Lunch in Lansing is an anarchist group who meets to give food to the needy there. I don't know, Kathy, you've been a little bit involved with some of their work. If I'm misrepresenting it, let me know. Yeah, okay. Food Not Bonds is a similar thing that started, I believe, in the 70s, where they were saying, hey, we're spending a lot of money on aircraft carriers to go blow up people in other countries. What if we took that money instead and fed people in our own country? Wouldn't that be kind of great? So they made this Food Not Bombs. the Industrial Workers of the World, that's the IWW. They're one of the first unions ever formed kind of in the US, I think it was. They've historically been incredibly welcoming of immigrants, of people of color, of women, before any of the other ones have, including some of the bigger ones, all the bigger ones. Most of them were just for white men workers. This one has been diverse the entire time. They're completely anarchistic. They operate off those ideals rather than how a lot of the unions work now, where there's kind of a union boss on top and things like that. So it's a little different. Same goals, obviously. OC Mutual Aid, that's Oakland County. So we've got some connections with Oakland County Mutual Aid societies or ways for people to help each other out. I think during the pandemic, a lot of you maybe saw mutual aid societies springing up. But this is just ways to help people to help each other before the state can do something. So, a lot of times we see that anarchists are just building things. They're building alternatives. They're doing the good work. They would rather, make sure that their organization is optimally democratically run. A lot of times anarchist groups spend just hours and hours on consensus voting, for example, in this consensus decision making, rather than blowing up a police precinct. So I think you can see, let me make sure I'm reading this one a little better. We've come a long way from the scary caricature of anarchists being bomb throwers and police precinct burners. As with anything, as you dig a little deeper, and we really just scratched the surface here, as you dig a little deeper, you reveal the nuances. Humanism is a philosophy that holds that humans and human flourishing is the central concern for them, right? You've now seen that, contrary to popular imagination, anarchists are also deeply committed to tearing down the systems that harm people and trying to build better alternatives. So anarchism is equally humanistically focused. I will flip the script though and say that anarchism is humanistic. We've seen that the essence of anarchism has been at the root of every political justice movement throughout history, and that humanism is inextricably interconnected to justice movements. So I'll proclaim the opposite, that anarchism is also humanism. I really appreciate Joe's address. I think it really set the tone for what I wanted to kind of end on. So the IWW that we were just talking about, they've got this concept called a hot shop. A hot shop is a workplace where the workers are very, very agitated about their working conditions, and they're already starting to take some form of collective action, whether that's making a union or doing a march on boss or whatever it is that you might be doing to try to get your conditions better. But the hot shop is a place where people haven't done the kind of slow, tedious work of getting to know each other, of making the connections, of being able to trust each other, to know exactly where they want to go, and they're really setting themselves up for failure. So a lot of times when the IWW gets a call from someone that's a hot shop, not that they dismiss it because you can still do some stuff there, but it's really a situation where they're angry, they're going to make something, but the moment the boss fires someone, for example, because of the action they took, the whole thing dissolves. Because they haven't built that trust, they haven't built that community, they haven't built the connections. I think as a nation right now, we're a proverbial hot shop. I think a lot of us are really angry, we're really wanting to do something. Some of us are maybe even trying to implement some actions. I think it'll be maybe more so in January once Trump is actually sworn in. But I think we should take a moment to learn from the organizing of laborers and try to build that community first. I think everyone being here today is already taking that step towards getting to know each other. I mean, I just running this for however many years I have, I'm seeing people who were introduced here at Sunday Assembly commenting and supporting each other on Facebook, or helping someone move or giving them something that they need. It's really a spot for people to get to know each other, and I think we're already doing that. So continue, definitely. I think things like this help. Continue showing up for each other, because eventually there's going to be a time when we all need to go protest something, and we'll know that we can count on every single person here to show up. There's going to be a time when you personally might need, something. Maybe you, hopefully not, but if you need to be covered in your basement or something, like covered in someone's basement, or something, who knows, God knows what's going to happen in the next few years. But you'll know that everyone here will step up and help you out. So, I don't know if this is the last slide, but I will say there's a book I read from Angela Davis called Freedom is a Constant Struggle. Just the title, I don't think she actually ever uses the words again in the book. It's a fantastic book. But words really resonated with me over time, and I think especially now, I'm realizing just how important the words are. There's no time to relax, really. Freedom is always a constant struggle. And it's going to be a really hard struggle for the next 4 years, at least 2 years, depending on how. So let's learn, let's organize, and let's get together. Thank you. Any questions or comments or concerns?
Bypassed a page about restaurants.
Oh yes, yes.
I mean, I'm a foodie, you know.
There's a pretty good, I didn't bring it in, but there's a pretty good.
I'm going like, what?
Yeah, there's a pretty good article or a little magazine that I got called Abolish Restaurants, and it's a little more angsty than anything, but basically they talk about all the problems with restaurants, and just how we should abolish them and not have this relation. It's one of these things, it's like, you know, I'm an anarchist, so just more interested in, you know,
How
writing.
did I find out about that?
How did I find?
How can I find out this concept of abolishing restaurants?
Oh, I can give you the book I've got. A zine, I've never really known how to pronounce it, but it's just short for magazine. What's it? Zine? Okay, yeah, magazine is short for magazine, and it's usually like a small self-published book that people put out about things. I can give you it's actually a whole, there's other things in it, but the whole package is called Against Work, and abolishing restaurants is just part of it, so.
I think the concept is very interesting because one of the big things is your employees are not paid enough.
Right.
So their workforce is sick.
Yep.
And it's just like, it's really hard for them to make a living.
Yep, tipping and everything, that's what,
Job and all that, so I mean, I'm very interested in what I have to say. I'm just teasing you, I'm just gonna talk.
I know, it is kind of fun, yeah. The IWW right now is working specifically in the space of restaurants and food delivery drivers, because that's places where there's a lot of turnover, and it's very difficult to unionize in those kind of workplaces. So they're trying to work with a network of people who can unionizing work. So, hopefully, yeah. Any other questions? I saw.
Would you say that the recent train bombing really relates to active anarchy or active
Unfortunately, I don't know much about that particular instance. Where was that at?
in Paris, the train, they like derailed something, and it was like one of the main trains into Olympics. So they were chaos.
Right.
I don't think anyone was hurt.
Okay.
But the chaos created usually like
I'll have to look into that later. I don't know, it kind of depends on if the person is like self-described as anarchist and things like this too. I mean, if it's someone on the right, for example, who's doing it, then that doesn't necessarily make it anarchist. So I'll have to look into that and see if I can get that effort.
Yeah, I just wondered, the term anarchy, you've shown in a number of occasions how people perceive what anarchy is. Do you think that there has to be some kind of new if you want to call it marketing push on a different word? Kind of like you said about these words used to mean this thing, now they mean that thing.
Yeah.
And if you said, writ large, you want to increase the anarchy movement in this area, I don't think you're going to have a whole lot of people buying into it. And so I just wonder, it's not that the word is wrong, it's that the conception is wrong. And so, does it need to be remarketed with a new word, a new style of expression?
So the unserious answer is if you could get enough anarchists to agree on the new terminology, then go ahead. There was one thing I didn't put in here, which I really wanted to, I think it's difficult to find, but I don't know if you've seen those memes with it's like the two strong arms, like agreeing, and it's like one thing on one side, one thing on the other, and it's like, it's LGBT people and anarchists, and in the middle it was way too many damn flags. There's a lot of,
It's from Predator.
what is it?
It's from Predator.
From Predator?
Schwarzenegger.
It's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, okay, I never understood that. I never looked up that one, so that's perfect. So it's from Predator, right? But yeah, no, there's a lot of different kinds of anarchists. You'll hear a lot of the term anarcho something. In fact, Joe and I were just talking about how Jared Tolkien was which I don't know how you square those two things, frankly. I watched some stuff on it, like, okay, what's he got? And it's like, no, this doesn't make any sense. But there's a lot of different kinds of like types of anarchism that kind of try to like meld things. There's like anarcho-communism, anarcho-capitalism, which is not even anarchism. But anyways, there's a lot of stuff. So if you can get people to agree on terminology, I think more often than not, it's more important to have the same values than the same labels. And I think that's something that we do a lot here at Sunday School, where we are pushing for the humanist ethics, and it doesn't matter so much if you're fully atheist or if you're fully, outside of the ideas of sort of kind of things like Mike or and other kinds of thought ideas. So long as we have the same kind of thrust as our ethics, and that's what's important. So I'm not so concerned about trying to make anarchism popular necessarily. I'm more worried about, are we all thinking from kind of an anarchist mindset of like, what's the hierarchy right now? Are they justified? And if not, what can we do to tear them down and make something, in its place that's better? Anything else? Yes.
So I think something that you've been touching on the entire presentation that I would like to put it into explicit words is a lot of the concepts that we think about, like democracy and totalitarianism, autocracy, we always think about the two poles. We don't think about the spectrum.
Right.
And generally, as they say, moderation is key, right? So sometimes we don't want to be either of those poles. But I do understand where he's coming from, because when we do campaigns, so just very quickly, like my background, I do a lot of postgraduate work in public policy and in business as well. So I'm very familiar with how they market things, right? And when we do branding, they sometimes overreach. They go through the polls, especially with the two-party system we have going on here, just in order to get as many people as we can into the campaign so that we have something to rally behind, right? And that's not always great. Because like you've been talking about with anarchism, the key is to let as many people as possible have as much freedom as possible in their opinions and their thoughts and their actions. But when you try to get a whole group of people to rally in one campaign, and you try to restrict each and every one of them to follow this cult-like, you have to be a certain way, you need to like capitalism, but you also need to like democracy at the same time, but you also need to hate abortion at the same time. You have to have all of these like values, like you have to have the list to be in this community, right? And I think that's the problem that actively drives the thing against anarchism. And like you said, trying to figure out a way to have everyone to have enough support to fight against large institutions or large bodies of power while keeping the anarchist spirit, while allowing people to have as much freedom as possible, is difficult. Definitely difficult.
There was one recently I was reading a piece from Emma Goldman, and the reading, I love Emma Goldman, she's a really awesome anarchist in the US specifically, where she did a lot of work. But she had a talk about kids raised by people in the anarchist movement, and how those kids ended up becoming people who rejected, in some ways, the kind of this left-leaning ideology of their parents. And she says, I love it, because it means that there's still a fighting spirit in the children today.
Right.
So, it's hard to get everyone on board with one thing, and I think most anarchists would be against that, even if it's somewhat against anarchism in general, but it's the liberty, right? Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, if anyone wanted to look into it, it's social contract theory. So that's the contract between you and whoever is in power, whoever is like president or prime minister or whoever it is. That's the relationship, like the official relationship between the public and those in power. Social contract theory.
Okay.
Yeah.